All right, so we are back. JD, how are you today?
All good, man. I got a request.
Yeah, please do.
You gotta start asking me something other than how are you today?
Tell me what you want to talk about.
I don't know, man. What did I eat today?
Everyone wants to know
I
what
think
JD's eating today.
that's a good theme for this show.
JD, what did you eat today?
Nothing yet.
Oh man, you're like, are you on a fast? Are you one of these fasters?
No, if you want to be honest, me and one of my brothers, basically, we were out till 3 a.m. last night. Then I had an 8 a.m. meeting.
JD, what are you doing at 3 a.m. in LA?
Me and a good friend of mine named Frank Clark plays for the Seahawks. We went to college together.
Frank Clark was in town.
Yeah, Frank is from here.
Are you air some dirty laundry?
We just had a good night, man.
Yeah.
Went over to One Oak and we lived it up a little bit last night. He was celebrating a good season and
it's so strange why you don't call me for these things.
oh man. I just missed you.
So JD, do you want to do the introduction today?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
That's a good
Let's
change
do
of
that.
pace. Yeah, like I said, I think talking about what I ate today would be a good introduction, good segue, because we are here with none other than the highly esteemed Chef Bill Blackburn.
Bill, what's up? How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
It's good to have you here.
Talk about what I ate this morning.
Yeah. So I can't remember exactly how. I think another chef put us in contact with each
I
other.
think so, yes. Anthony Zamora.
Zamora.
Right.
Yeah.
He was one of the nutritional chefs for the Rams.
Yes.
Do all chefs like each other, or it seems like you guys are a competitive bunch?
I think for the most part, a lot of chefs like each other. We're competitive, but we're competitive in a different way. We have our own, like I have my own internal competition going. I don't compete with other chefs per se. I just compete with ways to make myself better and stand out more.
I'm sort of buying that. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see as the day goes on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think similar in sports, how coaches have a fraternity with each other.
Yeah.
I kind of get that vibe because, like he said, another chef referred him. Anthony couldn't do the job; he was busy, so he was like, "Hey, I got somebody for you, though." So I think they stick together.
Yeah, I think maybe it's like you have to earn respect, right?
Exactly.
Once you earn it,
Right.
then it's on.
When you earn it, they'll refer you out more. Like, for example, Anthony referred me to you. He referred me to Jared Goff, and I became Jared Goff's private chef. And he also referred me to Klay Thompson.
Yep.
So last September, I worked with Klay Thompson for a month when he was in town.
Okay.
So if you're good, or the other chefs, like you said, respect you, then they'll refer you out.
Yeah.
They're comfortable with you
Right.
because you're not going to refer a knucklehead, right?
Right. Absolutely.
What is Jared Goff eating this week? What do you say?
I texted him a couple of days ago. As I was watching some of his interviews. So I just texted him to make sure that he was getting plenty of rest and plenty of fluids. So he's probably eating whatever the team is eating, maybe at the hotel. Yeah. But I made sure that last week when he was in town, he had plenty of good things to eat and some of his favorite foods to eat.
So are the instructions just drink as much water, stay hydrated?
Stay hydrated and get rest. Continue with your regular routine that you do when you're at home. Don't get caught up in all the hype. Yeah. So
it just seems like it would be so easy. 2 weeks is a long time of thinking about the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That's a long time. And then when you fly in, you're bombarded with media requests and things like that. So I think after Monday, they kind of calmed down and fell into their regular routine of, eating, resting, staying hydrated, and just going through their final walkthrough for the Super Bowl.
Funny, we were talking the other day. Chef came over and cooked a sample meal for me and the family. It was the first time trying his food, and obviously it was excellent. His reputation precedes himself, so
Thank
it was
you very
great.
much.
But we were talking about Jared and some of the guys, and just how particular some guys are. Like, one thing that stuck out to me that you were talking about was the consumption of protein, which is something every athlete obviously needs, especially a football player.
Right.
And you put me on to something new. That was the first time I heard of someone walking around eating
Turkey
meat.
burgers.
Yeah, right. Like,
yeah.
That's how he consumes his protein.
Right. Well, a couple of years ago in the off season, I worked with John Carlos Stanton, and he is a workout freak. He's super fit. I got a chance to work out with him once, and he is amazing in the gym. Takes his workouts and his off season habits very seriously. And one of the things that he did, he wasn't really much into protein shakes, but he just every day had me making, turkey burgers and chicken. So in between meals, when he wanted protein, instead of a protein shake, he would just grab a turkey burger and walk around eating it. No bread, no dressing, no nothing, just a turkey burger. So it was actually pretty cool because that, kind of changed the way I eat a little bit. So, a lot of times I would make extra and I would take some home or take some with me. Yeah. And when I got hungry at 7 or 8 at night, I would eat a turkey burger.
Right.
So it was good, and then when you're cooking for athletes on a high level, it's kind of important that you kind of look somewhat the part.
Right.
You have to be able to sell what you're doing.
Well, maybe we should back up and tell our audience a little bit about you and your work and your business.
Sure.
Let's get into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really got into cooking at an early age. Both my parents actually cooked, my mom and my dad. My dad would make us breakfast a lot on Sundays. So I came from a family where the guys actually cooked. It was kind of normal. My older brother cooks. One of my younger brothers is a firefighter, so he cooked a lot in the firehouse. So at an early age, actually in middle school, I took cooking classes. So it was either metal shop or cooking classes. Mm-hmm. So there were no girls in shop, right? Mm-hmm. So I took the cooking classes. Mm-hmm. So one of the first things I learned how to make was French toast, and it was actually really, really good. So, I got the cooking bug at an early age. So fast forward through college, I went to Oregon State, just, majored in speech communications. And then after college, ended up going to culinary school. And that at first, it was just to get better, to make myself better, to understand, the techniques of cooking, some of the fundamentals and stuff like that. But the more I got into it, the more I liked it. And
did you know where you were going, or was this?
No. I just thought I was just going to school, cooking.
What year was this?
This was in 1996.
96. So
yeah.
It's 1996. You're just sort of figuring stuff out on the fly.
Right. I actually had a regular corporate job. So, going to culinary school at night and weekends was just kind of a hobby. So the more I got into it, the more I started looking at ways how to make this a career. So, I started talking to people that had a similar background, that worked in corporate, that went to culinary school, and they actually started catering. So that's what I kind of focused on, catering, and then working as a private chef.
Yeah.
So I got into that.
Did you know what you wanted? Like, were you aware that you were building a career? Did you want to be wealthy? Did you want to impact the world? What was going on in your head?
No, I didn't necessarily have career aspirations at first, but as I got more and more into it, I thought, man, I can make this a career. So I started looking at markets that I can focus on. So I kind of wanted to focus on middle to high end type clients because I was used to eating kind of like middle to high end type food, working in corporate. So, that was my taste. That was my starting point.
You developed a palate.
I developed a palate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I developed a palate and I worked that palate.
I remember the other day you were kind of not hinting at, but you were getting into this story. We didn't get into as in depth that we're going to get right now, but you said it was a point where you basically were like, I'm not going to leave this corporate job until I really have something. And then it was like a moment when you knew.
Exactly. Yep. So what I had to do, I had a good salary in corporate with benefits. So I had to get to the point where I had to build up my income to at least match or exceed the corporate income. Right. Plus I had to have work in reserves, right? So I couldn't just like straight out quit. Right. So I built up my funnel, so to speak, like we talk in sales. I built up my funnel and built up my base, and pretty soon I was able to.
And so what does funnel and base mean to you?
Just building up a network of referrals.
And tell us more. That's our audience.
Right.
Just love
A network
this.
of referrals could be like I had catering jobs lined up, whether they be weddings or corporate events, birthday parties, and things like that. So once I realized that I had enough reserves or my funnel was full with, income that could replace my corporate income, I was able to leave the corporate job and dedicate my time full time to catering and to working as a private chef and developing that.
So what's that first step like? Like at the time you're known as I'm Bill and I work in corporate.
Right.
How do you even approach how do you even get to the point that you have a catering job? Like,
Right.
like how does that happen?
Yeah, what I would do is that I first started, one of my first big catering jobs was a grand opening for a Mercedes-Benz dealer.
Okay.
And you can't get too much higher than that.
Right,
That was like my third or fourth catering job.
Right.
And how I got that was that I went into a Mercedes dealer to buy a Mercedes. And I saw across the street that they were building a new dealership.
Yeah.
So I asked my salesperson, I said, you guys are going to have a grand opening. Who's going to do that for you? So he put me in touch with the contact person, the owner's wife, and I went in and talked to her. And I presented myself and my company in such a way that she thought that I was actually doing it for like 6 or 7 years. Mm-hmm. And during the interview, I said, please don't ask me how long I've been catering, right. Because I'd have to tell her that, I just started like 3 weeks ago. Right. Not 3 weeks ago, but, 3 months ago or so. So, when I put it together, it was just like I took a vacation, I took a week off. And I just kind of surrounded myself with people who knew more than me. Yeah. Like I hired my teacher from culinary school because he was an experienced chef and he was experienced with catering. So I said, look, you're going to be the boss. You're just going to guide me. I'm going to do what you tell me to do. Yeah. So I did that. And then what I also did to capture the moment, I hired a photographer to take pictures. And so from that point, I built a website. Yeah. So I had pictures of a real high-end event, a Mercedes-Benz event. So, everyone wants to see pictures from that. Right. So it was a base to build upon, and then from there, I did such a wonderful job. She asked me to do her Porsche dealership. Yeah. And then she introduced me to the BMW dealership down the street. She introduced me to the Harley Davidson dealer around the corner, and all of these people were having grand openings. So I was able to kind of move into that market, pretty smoothly.
So dealerships is how it all got started.
Yeah, it was hot. It was hot during that time.
Right.
It was hot during that time. And like any other job or any other profession, there are times when the industry tanks or the market slows down, and you really have to reinvent yourself again. Yeah. So, there was a time in the early 2000s where one year I did 45 weddings. Wow. I may have 3 weddings going on every day, every weekend almost. Yeah. Actually, there was a weekend, maybe it was 2006, I did Kenny Smith's wedding. Okay. And during that weekend, it was a Saturday, I had 2 other weddings. He was the 3rd wedding. Yeah. Yeah. So it was amazing. And his wedding was 250 people. The other weddings were like 150 and 75. So they were all big weddings. Yeah. And I made it to each one on time. Everyone was happy. Mm-hmm. So it was actually a success.
So first, my bad.
No.
But first and foremost.
I know we both want to dig in on this.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I just have to say, I see you're way more than a chef. I didn't know all of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds like you were in sales in corporate.
I was in sales, yes.
So you took all your skills that you got from that and applied it to something.
And even back before then, I was in the United States Marine Corps.
Oh, wow.
So I had that discipline and that structure.
Right.
And I came from a family of 9 children.
Okay.
So, and raised in Detroit. So, you had to be structured.
Yeah, to me, it strikes me that you put together a killer product,
right,
first of all, but then you knew how to go get that first deal.
Exactly.
And you were proactive about it. And so many people would just sit back and wait. They said, well, how come I'm not getting deals? And you made that Mercedes deal happen.
I made it happen.
You made it happen. And then you had the wherewithal to hire a photographer, get all of the stuff that you could put around the images now that you had something to lean on.
Right.
And then you built a reputation. And then the second you have a reputation, then it's on.
Mm-hmm. It's on.
It's on. Yeah.
And you're building your base and following up with people. And, I must have bugged Jordan about 30 or 40 times. I said, eventually he's going to get tired of me.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Is that
It's
true?
When can we work
No,
together?
no. But it was, yeah, he would just periodically hit me like maybe every 2-3 months. Like when we first got linked up, we were thinking about hiring somebody, take care of our young guys, like they're training for the draft and stuff like that.
Yeah. So for our audience, JD and his dad, you know, they work with young, NCAA stars that want to make the NBA.
Yeah. So
There you go.
it was that time period, and we were debating: should we do a chef? Should we do a meal service? And just to have a chef. Well, I mean, we got Louisiana roots. We entertain with food, so you know what I'm saying. that's all we do, regardless. You know, regardless if it's for a training period, whatever. Like right now, planning my sister's graduation party from Pepperdine right now. So we always have stuff going on. So usually in Michigan we have a chef, so we needed to have somebody. Just so happens my man is from Detroit, so it all works out.
It always goes back
All
to
in
the
the
D.
family, right?
Always
Yeah.
goes back to the D.
Yeah.
Always goes back to the D.
So how did you crack athletes? How did you mentioned Kenny Smith?
Yes. I talked about earlier about, reinventing yourself. So, I had all these weddings in 2006, 2007, all of these car dealerships that I was working for. I was doing a lot of cities and municipalities, doing catering for them. And then when the recession hit in 2008, all of that stuff went away. But I was fortunate during that time. I met a chef who was actually worked for Stefan Marbury. He was his private chef. So I started picking his brain and talking about that, and he was telling me what he was doing with him and 3 meals a day and so on and so forth. So I started going after that market. So eventually I found a family that I started cooking for in Newport Beach. And then eventually I started working with Fletcher Jones. Fletcher Jones is a car mogul in Southern California, got the largest Mercedes-Benz dealership in the country.
You just see his name everywhere. Here in
Everywhere.
Los Angeles.
Yeah, he owns about 26 car dealerships, about 15 of them are Mercedes-Benz. So I actually worked with him for about 2.5 years, 3 years. And what I learned about him and his family is that everything had to be organic. Everything had to be all natural, grass-fed, seafood had to be sustainable. Everything that I brought into the house, down to the seasonings, to the oils, to everything had to be organic. So I learned a lot about organic cooking and the value of cooking organic. And I got a chance, he was really into protein. He worked out a lot. He was really fit. So I got a chance to see how that affected the body and, how he, flowed after he ate. Because a lot of times when you eat organic, when you eat natural, you can eat a pork chop or you can eat a 22-ounce ribeye, but you don't feel full when you're done. And it just seems like the nutrients and the things that are in the vegetables and the meat just kind of makes you feel light. It kind of makes you feel like you can go work out afterwards.
So when you work with someone like Fletcher Jones, is that a full-time job? Just that one family?
That's a full-time job, 5 days a week, 10, 12, 13, 14 hours a day.
So you drop everything.
I drop
And
everything.
you just work.
Exactly. I'll do catering on the weekends. And, I picked up, a few catering, during that time, the NBA All-Star game was here. So Kenny had a big party in Hollywood. So I actually did his party that night. It was about 800 people. So, so I drop a lot of things, but I can't drop everything.
Right.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you saw the difference in high quality materials and food.
Exactly. You did. You really see a difference in high quality food, ingredients, and the results of that. So I started, kind of focusing a lot more on the higher end food, the natural, the organic. So shortly after leaving Fletcher, I decided to give a restaurant a shot. So I opened a restaurant called Blackburn's Farm to Table. And the whole focus of the restaurant was on healthy, organic, natural, sustainable seafood.
Uh-huh.
And, it really went over really, really well. And it opened more doors for me, which is how I got into, cooking with Jared Goff. And, eventually I got hired cooking for the LA Dodgers for their minor league team at Rancho Cucamonga called the Quakes. I ended up, this will be my 5th year working with them, actually. I do all of their home and road games. So I do their pregame, postgame meal. Last year, I started cooking for the visiting teams at Dodger Stadium. because a lot of the big push in sports is healthy,
Yeah.
organic. A lot of the nutritionists for the sports teams, they're pushing healthy, organic, grass-fed, good, clean food because they realize the value of it
Yeah.
and the performance behind it.
What happened to the restaurant? Is the restaurant still in
I actually
existence?
closed the restaurant last August.
Okay.
And the main reason why I closed the restaurant is last year I did about 230 baseball games. So, so I wanted that to be, and in addition to the baseball games, I cooked for Jared full time. So, and I worked in Klay Thompson for a month. So I wanted my focus going forward to be on something that I truly love, and that's working with athletes, working with sports teams, and making them better, looking for ways to make them better.
So you decide ultimately the restaurant wasn't the right way to express yourself.
Exactly.
What's the game plan? Like when you meet a Jared Goff or you meet a Klay Thompson, you sit down, walk us through that first meeting. Like how do you guys game plan or make a plan?
Sure. I used to say that, I would walk in and talk to a client and I would talk about the things that they like, but it's actually easier to talk about the things they don't like. People can actually express what they don't like better than what they like because people say, oh, I like everything. But, what Jared taught me is that he said, well, I'm going to tell you the things I don't like because that's easier. So from that point, we were able to put together, a menu, a program. And I think that after a couple of times of me cooking for someone, they kind of let me run with it. So they don't really ask me or tell me what to cook. They'll just say, hey, whatever you cook is great. It's everything I've tasted from you is really good.
Does the trainer sit down with you in this meeting, or is that something that really it's just you at that?
It's just really me. There was a time when a nutritionist might come in, or a nutritionist will touch bases with me and tell me of a few things to add to what I'm cooking to help them out. But from a one-on-one standpoint, it doesn't really happen that much because I'm kind of like right in line with what they're looking for. But when I'm working with some of the Major League Baseball teams, I'll always interact with the nutritionist, and they'll give me some suggestions of what to include in their lunch or dinner or their post-game meal or their batting practice meal, things along that line. So on a professional level with teams, I'll work more with nutritionists and the trainers and whatnot. But on a one-on-one basis, I typically don't, but we don't really have to.
Do you get put in a position with an athlete where they're not sort of sticking to their diet, and you sort of have to say something, or is your job just to keep cooking?
It kind of both. Like I always feel that hey, someone 22, 23, they can have some mac and cheese. They can have some ribs, they can have some gravy and things like that. But it's all a balance. So what I try to do is create like 4 or 5 days we're going to eat good, 1 or 2 days we're going to cheat and have what we want. Because, at 23, 24, 25 years old, you're going to burn that off so fast. You have so much energy, you're working out, and, it's not like when you're 30 or 31 or 32 when your metabolism starts to change. Yeah.
Is it your job to make sure there's no like dessert in the house?
I typically don't make dessert, but sometimes they want dessert. Or if I cook for the family, they'll say, hey, can you bring dessert? Yeah, so it's good. Like I said, someone 20, 23, 24, they're going to like some chocolate chip cookies and some ice cream.
Right.
I
think that's what makes you get retained so much.
Right.
Because you're realistic. So many chefs today are like, you can only eat one piece of rice, and, that's not realistic. Like,
right, that's not, and I just learned that when you crave for something, it's better to have it and get it out of your system than to nickel and dime it to death, over a 2-day period. Like even at now, sometimes I crave for stuff. So I just go do it and just get it out of my system and move on.
Have you noticed that, or have you ever had a situation where it was an issue though, in terms of, all right, now, like, let me show you, you can't just eat this every day. You can't drink this every day. Do you ever have to do like a learning curve with a guy to like educate them? Yeah.
Yes.
I would assume.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny because when working with the minor league baseball players, they're all 19, 20, 21, 22. And a lot of them often are from, South America, Dominican, Cuba, and they're coming into being on their own for the first time, and they're like totally into fast food,
Right.
which is really funny because they're doing what we did at like 15, 16 years old. But even with them, after going crazy with fast food for a while, they'll come around and they'll start eating healthy. They'll actually see what the other guys are getting from it. And, halfway through the season, they'll start changing up their diets and becoming, more well-rounded like the other players and eliminating the fast food and some of that stuff.
So I got a business question for you. As you know, the theme of Chance Bending is all about entrepreneurship and making a way for yourself and doing things. And you obviously are the ultimate entrepreneur. Listening to something you mentioned earlier when you said you have to recreate yourself, I think any good entrepreneur knows that's a key to being successful. Over the years, what I would assume that you've had to recreate yourself many times. As you've kind of told the story. What is your view on where you started to today? Like what are some keys that you think that you did have to recreate? I would assume social media and all this stuff going on now, maybe. I don't.
Right. Social media, but more so just networking.
Right.
Just networking, making contacts, working your contacts. For example, a few years ago when I heard the Rams were going to move to Los Angeles from San Diego, my goal at the time was to become the Rams chef. So I started monitoring social media. I started calling any and everyone I knew to find out if they knew someone with the Rams. Do you know the strength and conditioning coach? Do you know the nutritionist? And eventually I found one of the strength and conditioning coaches who referred me to the head trainer who referred me to the nutritionist.
99% of people would not do this work.
No.
Like that, it's plain and simple.
Right.
Like that is the dividing line right there, what you just said.
Right. And it's interesting because I was blasting emails. I went onto the Rams website. I mean, I didn't know what their email address was, but I started looking at the fine print, and I was able to find the National Association of Football Trainers. And I saw the email address, right? So I just assumed that the email address was, let's say, for example, les@larams.com or laramsnfl.com. So I started sending emails like that. Some of them bounced back, and when they didn't, I figured, hey, I had the right email address. So I just stuck with it, and then eventually I found the trainer, like I said, who referred me to the nutritionist, and I developed a relationship with them. So when the Rams first moved out here, I started talking to him, and then he said, hey, you want to come and work with Jarrett? He's looking for a chef. And bingo, there it was. I actually cooked for the Rams team a couple of times for the month of September, but I think Jarrett kind of scooped me up and said, this is my guy.
I was about to say, I think that's a better gig than just cooking for the whole team every day.
It is. Because, for example, watching the game last week when they were playing, you develop such a relationship with him and his family that it's almost like you're part of the family. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
The chef knows everything. The chef sees everything, within a certain amount of, time while they're there. But you develop, and you get to see that person, all the time. You get to see how they react to certain situations. You get to see them watching ESPN and Stephen A. Smith dogging them out. And you see how they react, and you see it doesn't faze them. So you just get a better insight into their character, which is really important.
I feel like in your business, there's so many different factors that you're managing. Obviously, you're well equipped to do it with your background, but obviously you're cooking, you're managing relationships, you are dealing with vendors, you're dealing with marketing. You know what I'm saying?
There's so many things at one time. I'm like MacGyver.
Right. What are the bigger factors that you have to manage, in your business?
Well, as far as bigger factors, I think I'm constantly thinking of new opportunities. You know what I mean? Because, something could happen or things can change. So you're constantly as I talked earlier about building up your funnel, you're constantly looking for things to add to your funnel. And then at the same time, with as much as I do, I have 2 or 3 chefs working with me. So I want to make sure that they're on board with what I'm doing. So the biggest thing is that making sure everything is cooked the same way, that we're all following the same recipes. You ever go to a restaurant and you have a steak with let's say a marinara sauce, and this is really good. You go back 3 weeks later and it's different. You know what I mean? So like, I want to prevent that. So I want to make sure that whether I cook or one of my other chefs cook, everything is the same every time. We're all following the same recipes, the same guidelines, and that sort of thing.
So the way you've been able to scale, you actually have chefs underneath you. Is that the way? That's why you're always looking for new deals, because, if you sign a deal with Jared Goff, then like you're off the table. But it sounds like this is the way that you keep creating new business.
Exactly. Although I'm the only one that cooks for Jared.
Got it. Excellent. Okay, so you're the only one that cooks for Jared.
Right.
However, your group of chefs, you take on new deals.
Right. So they may help me with baseball. They may help me with catering. They may help me with other jobs. So they, because I have good people working with me, it frees me up to do other things and to focus, and to make sure that they're focused. And the most important thing is consistency of the food, your vendors, and things like that, the product. So you never want to have a crappy product, an inferior product. So most of the vendors that I've been using for 10, 15 years or so. So I know the quality is always going to be right on point.
When did you make the transition to LA?
I came to LA after high school. I joined the Marines.
Oh, okay.
And got my discharge out here, stayed here and went to college, dabbled in a little football and sports, and then finished up school, stayed in California, and then worked in corporate, and then eventually moved into what I'm doing now.
Okay. I got you.
It's an incredible story. Do you have any advice for our audience if they're thinking about, trying to get into working with athletes or working in your field? Do you have any advice or suggestions for them here in 2019?
Yeah, the main thing is just have a plan, work your plan, and stay true to your plan. But always just be passionate about your work. Just be passionate. I'm very passionate about my work, and when I'm cooking for someone and I finish doing the meal for them, and I'm like peeking around the corner to see if they're smiling, see if they're happy, and I can see that, then that kind of makes me happy. Mm-hmm. Just be really passionate about your work. Just with anything, it's a craft, it's an art. Whether you're a baseball player, be passionate about baseball. Show up on time, show up early, get in the extra work. I'm constantly getting in the extra work. I'm constantly learning. I get probably 7, 8, 9 emails a day from different learning sources, mm-hmm. whether it be different recipes or, different websites where chefs network together and share ideas and things like that. So I'm always constantly looking to improve, no matter what I have, no matter what level I'm on. I'm always looking to make myself better, mm-hmm. and that's most important. Mm-hmm. The minute you get satisfied, the game is over.
I'm going to steal one of Ben's famous questions for Chance Bendy. What's next for Chef Bill Blackburn in 2019?
I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. But I'm going to make it better.
Yeah.
I want, I get a lot of joy, and like my first year cooking for the Dodgers minor league team, they won the championship. So it had to be the food.
Right.
I cooked for Giancarlo Stanton, and he wins the MVP.
Yeah.
It had to be the food.
Right.
I got a call, and right after the Rams got off to a great start from Klay's brother, Michael. And he said, man, I don't know what you're putting in Jared's food, but send some of that up here for Klay. Yeah. So, I want to make sure that the people I cook for, that I'm maximizing their performance. It's just, they're great athletes, and you're just a little part
Yeah.
of what they're doing. But you want to make sure your part is on point.
Yeah.
I want to make sure, like, if I'm working with you and I'm working with guys coming into the NBA and trying to get ready for camp, I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to make them better. Whether it be, performance enhancing food, like lean chicken, broccoli before they go work out, vegetables, pasta, things like that, to give them the edge through food. That's what I want to do.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much today. This was last question. What's Jared Goff eating once he wins the Super Bowl MVP? What meal are you going to make for him when you sit down and you all celebrate?
Shrimp, crab, and lobster mac and cheese.
Okay.
Oh man, that sounds so good.
Here we go.
Well, this has been a pleasure today.
Thank you.
It's so
It's
good
been
to better understand your process, how you think about things, and it sounds like pun intended that you have the winning recipe. You just continue to make joy and do great stuff. So thank you.
Thank you very much. It's enjoyable.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
yeah.
Thank
This
you.
has been a good one.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Until then.